Life in this modern age often feels like standing in the center of a raging storm, constant noise, endless demands, flashing screens, racing thoughts that never seem to rest. Many walk through their days overwhelmed, their minds scattered, their hearts burdened by chaos. But here's the truth. You were not created to live fractured, distracted, and enslaved to confusion. The human brain was designed with a remarkable ability to change, adapt, and reshape itself in response to the experiences we feed it. This capacity is called neuroplasticity, and it is not just a scientific concept. It is a divine gift that reveals how deeply we are wired for transformation. You are not trapped by the patterns of distraction, weakness, or addiction that plague you. You are capable of renewal at the deepest level of your being. And every thought you allow, every action you repeat, every environment you dwell in becomes the raw material that molds the architecture of your brain. This is why chaos is never final. No matter how entangled your mind may feel, there is always the possibility of reorganization, of breaking old chains and forging new pathways that lead to focus, clarity, and power. When you understand neuroplasticity, you begin to see that the mind is not a battlefield you must endure. It is a landscape you can cultivate. If you sow seeds of distraction, if you give your attention to shallow pursuits and toxic habits, the circuits of your brain will strengthen those patterns and chaos will become your default state. But if you discipline your attention, if you practice focus, if you choose what is noble, what is purposeful, what is aligned with truth, then the very neurons in your brain will begin to rewire themselves around those choices, finding clarity and mastery into your very biology. The brain is not loyal to chaos or clarity. It is loyal to whatever you repeatedly practice. Think of it like carving a path through a wilderness. Each step you take in the same direction creates a trail, and the more you walk it, the clearer and stronger it becomes. Soon that trail becomes the natural way forward. Your brain works in the same way. Every time you resist distraction and bring your attention back to what matters, you are carving a path. Every time you replace negative thought patterns with truth and hope, you are carving a path in the red. Every time you set your mind on discipline rather than indulgence, you are carving a path, and eventually those paths become highways, automatic, effortless routes that lead to clarity and mastery. But here lies the sacred weight of responsibility. Neuroplasticity does not discriminate. It will reshape your brain toward whatever you feed it, whether life-giving or destructive. If you feed your mind chaos, chaos will grow stronger. If you feed it truth, discipline, and focus, clarity will dominate. Will dominate. This is why Scripture warns us to take every thought captive. Why we are called to meditate on what is good and pure, because every thought is a brick in the structure of your mind. You are literally building your brain with the thoughts you entertain. Science confirms what faith has always declared, that renewal begins in the mind. Neural circuits are strengthened by repetition. Habits, whether holy or harmful, engrave themselves into your biology. When you pray, when you worship, when you discipline your body and mind, you are not only exercising faith, you are rewiring your brain to desire those very practices more deeply. Conversely, when you yield to temptation, when you surrender to distraction, when you allow bitterness, envy, or lust to linger, you are engraving those patterns into your nervous system. That is why it can feel so hard to break free. But difficulty is not impossibility. Is not impossibility. The same brain that was wired by sin can be rewired by obedience. The same circuits that once led you to destruction can be retrained to lead you to victory. Do not underestimate the holiness of your daily choices. Each decision is a signal to your brain, instructing it on what to become. Small acts of discipline, repeated consistently, are not just good habits, they are neural sermons preaching to your nervous system until it aligns with the truth you live by. And when you stumble, when you fall, do not believe the lie that all progress is lost. The brain is mercifully flexible. With every return, every renewed act of focus, every humble prayer that shifts your attention back to the eternal, the pathways of chaos weaken and the pathways of clarity strengthen. This is why mastery is possible. Not because you are strong enough in yourself, but because God has designed your very brain to be shaped by His truth. What you practice becomes who you are. And through the mystery of neuroplasticity, even the most chaotic mind can be transformed into a vessel of clarity, focus, and holy power. Dopamine is often misunderstood as the chemical of pleasure. but it is far more powerful and far more dangerous than that simple label suggests. It is the chemical of pursuit, the spark of motivation that drives the human spirit to move, to chase, to hunger for more. It does not simply reward you when you achieve something. It pulls you forward before the reward even arrives. That is why it can either be the greatest servant of self-mastery or the most ruthless master of chaos. Sure, the brain is wired so that dopamine surges not just when we experience satisfaction, but when we anticipate it, when we fix our eyes on a goal, when we imagine the possibility of victory. And here lies the profound truth. What you set your desire on determines where your dopamine flows, and where your dopamine flows determines the course of your life. If your desires are shallow, if they are tied to instant gratification, then your brain will flood with dopamine in response to the most fleeting hollow pursuits, likes on a screen, indulgence in unhealthy habits, distractions that promise relief but deliver emptiness. Each time this happens, the brain is reshaped. Circuits are reinforced, and suddenly the pursuit of the shallow becomes compulsive, enslaving you to cravings that never satisfy. But if your desires are noble, if they are tethered to purpose, discipline, and eternal truth, then the same neurochemical that enslaves others becomes the fire that fuels your transformation. Dopamine itself is not evil or holy. It is the object of your desire that sanctifies or corrupts it. This is why Scripture speaks of delighting in the law of the Lord, why it commands us to seek first the kingdom, why it warns against setting our hearts on worthless idols. The heart sets the direction, but dopamine provides the drive. When your heart is aligned with righteousness, your brain's chemistry begins to serve that alignment, making the pursuit of truth not only possible but desirable. The craving for distraction can be replaced with the craving for discipline. The hunger for temporary escape can be redirected into the hunger for growth and mastery. And when this happens, the battle shifts. You are no longer just resisting temptation. You are rewiring your motivation system to run toward what is holy. But here is the danger. Dopamine is released not only by what we do, but also by what we expect. If you allow your imagination to feast on chaos, if you entertain fantasies of sin, if you constantly anticipate indulgence, the brain responds with the same chemical surge it would give to an act of triumph. This is why people feel trapped even before they act. The brain has already been flooded by the anticipation. Yet this same principle can be redeemed. If you learn to anticipate the reward of obedience, if you visualize the power of discipline, if you meditate on the eternal joy set before you, your brain will begin to reward those anticipations with the same chemical fire. Suddenly, righteousness becomes not just the right choice, but the desirable choice, the path your brain hungers to walk. Dopamine is a teacher, and it teaches through repetition. Every time you feed it, you train it. Every time you resist unhealthy triggers and replace them with purposeful action, you recalibrate your reward system. It may feel slow, it may feel invisible at first, but beneath the surface, the circuits of motivation are being reshaped. One day, what once felt impossible will feel natural because the chemistry of your brain has been captured and redirected. This is the sacred science of desire. To master yourself, you must master what you pursue. If you chase shadows, your brain will betray you with endless hunger. If you chase truth, your brain will strengthen you with holy fire. God did not design dopamine to enslave you, but to drive you toward the life you were created for. The question is not whether dopamine will shape your destiny. It will. The question is what you will choose to hunger for, and whether you will surrender that hunger to chaos or to clarity, to sin, or to sanctification, to fleeting satisfaction, or to eternal mastery. Stress is not just a feeling, it is a full-body command, a surge of signals from the autonomic nervous system designed to prepare you for battle or flight. The pounding of your heart, the quickening of your breath, the tightening of your muscles, these are not accidents. They are ancient patterns of survival, crafted into your very being by divine design. Yet in the modern world, the same response meant to protect us has become the very force that destroys us on us. Instead of fighting lions in the wilderness, we battle constant noise, endless demands, digital overload, and spiritual distractions. Our nervous system cannot tell the difference. It reacts as though every email, every bill, every conflict were a mortal threat. threat. And so people live enslaved, bodies flooded with stress hormones, minds hijacked by fear, hearts weary and broken. But here lies a truth that many never grasp. The autonomic nervous system can be trained. The body is not a prison. It is a vessel. It is the same circuits that lock you in panic can be reshaped to anchor you in peace. Your breath, your focus, your inner state, they are the handles by which you take hold of your nervous system and teach it to serve rather than sabotage. When the storm of stress rises, you do not need to be tossed like a ship without anchor. You can command the storm. You can breathe in patterns that quiet the racing heart. You can train the mind to see not threat, but challenge, not chaos, but opportunity. This is not fantasy. It is neuroscience. It is neuroscience. The vagus nerve, the rhythm of inhalation and exhalation, the balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic, these are the tools by which you seize hold of the system that most believe is beyond their control. And yet this is not merely a biological trick. It is a spiritual discipline. Scripture does not tell us to be anxious for nothing in ignorance of physiology. It tells us because the Creator wired our very bodies to respond to trust, to stillness, to faith. When you set your heart on peace, when you cast your cares upon Him, the body begins to follow. The parasympathetic system, the circuitry of rest and repair, awakens. Blood pressure lowers, clarity returns, the fog of fear lifts. You are not merely calming yourself. You are aligning your body with the truth that you are not meant to live enslaved to fear. The pathway from stress to resilience is not the removal of pressure, but the training of response. You cannot stop life from pressing on you, but you can decide how your nervous system will interpret that pressure. Will it break you, or will it forge you? When you repeatedly face stress with intentional breath, with focused mind, with trust greater than fear, the nervous system learns what once sent you spiraling now strengthens you. The same adrenaline that once overwhelmed you becomes the fuel for courage. Resilience is not the absence of stress. It is the mastery of stress. It is the rewiring of the autonomic system to say, oh, this pressure will not consume me, it will shape me. Even more powerful, this training is cumulative. Just as muscles grow through repeated lifting, so too does the nervous system grow through repeated calm in the midst of chaos. Each time you take control rather than collapse, the circuitry strengthens. One day, the storms that once shattered you will barely move you, not because they are smaller, but because you are stronger. You have trained your body to be the servant of peace instead of the prisoner of panic. And let us not forget, resilience is not for your sake alone. A calm nervous system radiates stability to others. Children look to parents for cues. Communities look to leaders for anchors. If you are mastered by stress, that stress spreads like fire. But if you are grounded, resilient, trained in peace, then your strength becomes their strength. Your calm becomes their calm. The training of your nervous system is not selfish. It is a ministry, a witness, a testimony that chaos does not have the final word. The autonomic nervous system will respond to whatever master you allow. Fear or faith, chaos or clarity, stress or resilience. It was never meant to rule you. It was meant to be ruled. And when you rise up to train it, when you breathe with intention, when you anchor yourself in faith, you take back what the enemy has stolen. You stop living as a slave of adrenaline and begin walking as a steward of peace. This is how chaos is transformed into clarity, how storms become stillness, how the very wiring of your body becomes a testament to mastery instead of misery. Sleep is not a luxury, it is a commandment written into the fabric of creation. The very first pages of Scripture declare that God Himself rested on the seventh day, not because He was weary, but because He was establishing a pattern for all living beings. The heavens and the earth move in rhythms, sunrise and sunset, tides and seasons, wakefulness and sleep. To defy these rhythms is to wage war against your own design, and no one wins that battle. The human brain, the very seat of your clarity and strength, is tethered to the sacred order we call circadian rhythm. It is not merely about closing your eyes at night. It is about aligning your life with the cycles of light and dark that God set in motion since the beginning of time. Every cell in your body has a clock. Every neuron in your brain ticks to the rhythm of night and day. The master clock, nestled deep in the hypothalamus, takes its cues from light, from the rising and setting of the sun. When you honor this design, when you seek morning light and let darkness guide you to rest at night, your brain aligns with clarity, focus, and resilience. Hormones balance, metabolism stabilizes, memory strengthens. But when you rebel against this order, when you stay bathed in artificial light at midnight, when you scroll endlessly under the glow of a screen, you fracture the harmony. The brain grows dull, the body grows weak, and confusion begins to rule instead of clarity. Sleep is the great repairer. While you lie still, the brain does not rest idly. It works with divine precision. Toxins that build up during the day are washed away in the river of cerebrospinal fluid. Memories are sifted, stored, and strengthened. Emotions are processed. Wounds of the heart are stitched together, and the nervous system is recalibrated. You wake not just refreshed, but renewed. To neglect sleep is to neglect healing, to forfeit the clarity that comes only in the night watch of God's design. And yet so many wear sleeplessness as a badge of honor, boasting in exhaustion as though it were strength. But exhaustion is not strength. It is slow decay. It is the erosion of your capacity to think, to feel, to live with power. The circadian rhythm is also the gatekeeper of energy. Rise with the sun and your body releases cortisol in perfect measure, not as an enemy, but as fuel, as a divine signal to awaken with strength. As evening falls, melatonin flows like oil on troubled waters, whispering to the body, it is time to rest. When you disrupt this flow, when you confuse the body with irregular sleep, with caffeine at midnight, with artificial light that mimics the day, you invite chaos into your mind. Anxiety grows louder, focus slips through your fingers, and you walk through life as though in a fog, a mob. The clarity you seek cannot be found in more effort, more noise, more striving. It is found in honoring the sacred rhythm of rest and wakefulness. And here is the mystery. Sleep is not passive. It is warfare. It is where your body fights disease, where your brain fortifies memory, where your spirit regains strength for another day of battle. The enemy delights in a weary believer. For a weary believer is easily deceived, easily broken, easily led astray. But one who guards their rest, one who honors the rhythm of night and day, becomes unshakable. Their mind is sharp, their heart is steady, their spirit is unclouded. They see with clarity where others stumble in confusion. Even science declares what Scripture has always proclaimed. To everything there is a season, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to be awake and a time to sleep. Ignore it and chaos reigns in the mind. Honor it and clarity floods like light through darkness. The pathway to self-mastery is not found only in effort, but in surrender. Surrender to the rhythm established by the Creator Himself. You cannot command your brain to function in clarity if you refuse it the rest it requires. You cannot hope for power if you constantly strip yourself of renewal. Mastery begins not in endless striving, but in wise alignment with the cycles that govern every living thing. To build a superbrain, to transform chaos into clarity, you must become a guardian of sleep and a student of rhythm. Rise with the sun, let morning light baptize your eyes, let the darkness of night wrap you in rest. In doing so, you do more than sleep. You participate in the order of creation. You declare with your very body that you will not live fractured, distracted, enslaved to chaos. You will live aligned, clear, powerful, because you have learned the secret of honoring the rhythms that heaven itself ordained. Focus is not merely a mental trick. It is a spiritual discipline and a biological gift. The human brain is wired to be shaped by whatever it gives attention to most. Where attention flows, energy follows. And where energy flows, pathways are carved deep within the mind. This is neuroplasticity at work, the divine capacity for transformation that God Himself built into our nervous system. Chaos thrives when focus is scattered, when the eyes and the mind are pulled in 1,000 directions by distraction, temptation, and noise. But when you choose intentionally, deliberately, to place your focus on a single task, a single pursuit, a single calling, the chaos begins to bow. The disordered fragments of your life begin to align into structure, and clarity emerges as though light has broken into darkness. Every moment you direct your focus, neurons that fire together wire together. This means that the act of repeated focus on something, whether holy or unholy, whether productive or destructive, etches grooves into your neural circuitry. Over time, those grooves become the default highways of thought, the paths you walk without even thinking. This is why Scripture warns to guard your heart and your mind diligently, for whatever you consistently set your focus upon becomes the master you obey. If you focus on chaos, you cultivate chaos. If you focus on clarity, you build clarity. But focus does not happen by accident. It is an act of war. Distraction is the weapon of the enemy, a subtle thief that pulls you away from purpose. Every notification, every fleeting temptation, every wasted hour is a stone laid upon the altar of confusion. Yet God has given you the power to resist, to take every thought captive, to align your focus with what builds instead of what destroys. When you learn to fix your gaze, not just in fleeting moments, but with unwavering consistency, you become a vessel through which chaos is transformed into order. Deliberate focus turns scattered energy into power. Consider a magnifying glass catching the light of the sun. The same rays that warm your face can, when concentrated, ignite a flame. This is the principle of focus. Your thoughts, your attention, your time, when scattered, amount to warmth, but not transformation. But when gathered, when directed with intention, they set fire to your life with purpose and power. This is why so many live in perpetual chaos. They have never learned the holy art of focus. They move from one distraction to another, always busy, never effective. The brain, like a field, grows whatever seeds are planted most consistently. If you scatter seeds carelessly, weeds will flourish. If you sow with focus, a harvest of clarity and mastery will grow. Focus is also obedience to divine order. God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, and focus is the tool by which we align with his peace. When you take control of your attention, you declare that chaos no longer rules you. Instead, you rule over it. You declare that your mind is not a playground for the enemy, but a temple for clarity and power. Each act of focus, whether in study, prayer, work, or discipline, becomes a stone in the structure of mastery you are building. Slowly, what was once overwhelming begins to take shape. What once felt scattered begins to move in harmony. And let us not forget that focus is sustained by sacrifice. To give your attention to one thing is to withhold it from another. To focus on building clarity means you must die to distraction, crucify the lesser desires that beg for your eyes and your thoughts. This is not easy. It is costly. Yet it is through this cost that strength is born. The brain rewires itself in the furnace of repetition and sacrifice, and clarity emerges as the reward of disciplined focus. When you learn to wield focus, you discover that chaos was never stronger than you. It was only waiting for you to decide. It was waiting for you to gather the fragments of your attention, to silence the noise, to fix your gaze. And as you do, the miracle of transformation unfolds. Chaos dissolves, order emerges, clarity shines like the morning sun, and your brain, your life, your spirit align with the power you were created to carry.